Welcome, my name is Colleen Tauke and I'm the sewing specialist here at Fons & Porter. In this Quilting Quickly tutorial, I'm going to show you how to put together the basics in the quilt called Make New Friends. If you'd like to purchase our pattern, please visit our website. We're going to be working with a kind of an unusual group of fabrics. We're using a gray and a tan that really read as a silver and gold, therefore the Make New Friends. And the white just is a soft contrast so that we can have this wonderful array of colors coming together into one quilt. We're using a white background fabric and 5-inch pre-cut squares. And from those squares, the first thing we're going to be doing is making triangle squares. Now that's a pretty easy technique. Here's a variety of combinations. You're going to be following the instructions for the tan and the white and the gray and all the combinations to put together, but this is the process that you're going to be using. You're going to take two fabrics that you're going to be making triangle squares. This combination is real similar to the one you see here, a light and a more medium. And you're going to be taking a 1/4-inch seam marker. We've got this one here. You're going to lay across the fabric. It has a center line that you're going to match up with corner to corner across the block. Now we're going to be marking on the back side of our fabrics. Just to double check to make sure I've got the right sides together here. Because there's such a subtle white print on there, I'm going to make sure that you have the right side. Corner to corner, we're going to use a fabric marking pen. In this instance, I've got a friction pen that we're using. And we're going to mark the sewing lines across the block. And then we can go to the sewing machine and, whoops, my pen didn't leave a dark enough mark for me to see. I can see, almost see it, but you wouldn't be able to see it. Okay, well, this kind of a pen disappears when it hits heat. So when we go to the iron, then the lines will disappear. There, I've got lines that I can see for stitching. They don't have to be super dark. A lot of times, many of us will use even a mechanical pencil to make just a real light line on our fabric. Then I'm going to set my machine for the short stitch for machine piecing. And we're going to just sew right along those lines that we marked on the block. And we're going to be making 2 triangle squares at a time in this process. So down one side and then down the second. This was the quickest part of the project. The other is going to take a little bit more work and a little more following along with our diagrams to make sure that we get everything assembled properly. Okay, now I've got those stitching lines. I've stitched with red so that you can see it, but we take that to the iron then, and we'll heat set those seams. Kind of embed the thread into the fabric. Then we can either use a rotary cutter or a scissors. Since the stitching has already been done, we don't really need to worry about how much seam allowance. Just try to cut right down the center of the stitching, like that. And then we press the seam allowances to one side. Whoops, don't need steam on this one. We just need to press the seam to one side. And you'll have created your triangle square. And you do that with the other piece also. So you have a variety of triangle squares ready to go into your quilt project. Now, the other pieces that you will need to cut are these, are background bars and 3 different sizes of background fabric. So we have rectangles there. We also have some small squares that are cornerstones where our blocks come together at. They're little tiny squares. And the last piece that you're going to need to cut, your instructions will tell you there are 2 different size squares that you're going to cut. A smaller one that you're going to cut corner to corner diagonally, and a large square that is going to instruct you to cut in both directions, creating 1/4 square triangles. The reason for the variety of the cuts like this is to keep the bias edge, the direction with most stretch, toward the inside of your quilt, the interior, so you don't have distortion when you're putting it together. And I'll point those out to you here in a second when we start to look at our assembly. Now, I've got a lot of the pieces, remember those rectangles and the triangles that we talked about, ready to lay out. I've got a portion of the quilt here. Let me arrange it so it'll be for you to see. I've got, remember those little tiny cornerstones that I talked about? Those get put together. Your triangle squares are here. You've got the large triangles on the outside edge. Your instructions are your best friend when putting together a project like this, because you'll see that the triangle squares that we made are set on point. They're set on their points here. So they fall down kind of like almost like jewels or gems down through the quilt. So it's all about aligning those to make sure that if I lay this out like this, you'll start to see there's where my row of gems is going down in the gray in that first column, and then I'll have another assembled there. But we've got triangles of white that pop in to fill. And remember, we cut pieces. Those go in there. It's kind of like doing a puzzle at this point. Maybe that's why quilters love puzzles so much. There was a small square that we cut just in half once. That's an outer corner here. So that you can create, I forgot the bars in between. There was one more piece. We want those pieces to float. So those were here. And so that our gems are kind of floating down through the quilt. So there were some white bars added in there, like this. So you're going to create then, as you get it laid out, you're going to create rows. So I would go in, I would assemble this row and this sashing row, and then like this large selection here of pieces that I already have together. And then you just join the rows together, like in traditional piecing. If you'd like to see more of our Quilting Quickly tutorials, please visit our website. Thanks for joining me today.